Then at the end of the 14 years, you see, the mine closed, and of course there was a terrible downturn then, and despondency and so forth. But traditionally, of course, looking back down the generations, that's the nature of mining. They got 14 years, that particular project. Now, it was highly successful in terms of money as well, and it was probably the most profitable mining development ever to take place in Silvermines. And of course there were great spin-offs in terms of employment and so forth, and many people made great use. In particular, I suppose farmers and smallish farmers made great use of the money, because they worked in the mine during the day and they were able to farm their farms and develop their farms as well. So it had a wonderful beneficial effect from an economic point of view. But the aftermath then, after closure of course, when the dust settled, and the dust didn't settle, people began to realise that there were problems, and there were environmental problems which were not very manifest during production. For one thing, the so-called tailings pond, which had been built to accommodate the waste of the mine, that was built at the start of the mine, a 50-acre site near Gortmore, had been used, if you like, to accommodate 50% of the waste, which is normal with lead and zinc mining, that you deposit 50% in a tailings pond and you backfill the other 50%. So consequently, over a period of 14 years, you had a great build-up of mining residue, which of course was highly toxic with the high lead content and so forth. And sadly, it was developed and deposited into a pond that didn't have any proper environmental control. In other words, there was no lining on it to prevent the seepage of polluted water and so forth. And it transpired, of course, that the area and the adjacent Kilmastuller River was heavily polluted. But the real problem came in the aftermath of mining, about a year after closure, when, because there was no liquid intake, the pond itself began to dry up, and the prevailing winds then of February and March began to blow, and it began to blow this dust around, which had capacity to penetrate into people's houses and attics and so forth. And it caused great concern and great annoyance and great sorrow and great worry to people, because firstly it's toxic dust, and secondly it seemed to be virtually impossible to control it. And thirdly, of course, by this stage the company Mogul had left the site, and they were no longer interested in, or apparently interested in, rectifying it. Because during production, nobody spoke out, or hardly anybody spoke out about the dangers of it, and nobody foresaw that in a short period after the closure that the mine would cause such trouble. But it did, and it caused serious trouble. And then the locals organised themselves, meetings were held, deputations were made, the local authority, to the mining companies and so forth. And that went on year after year after year. A small amount of remedial work was carried out by Mogul, now Enix, incidentally, who had assumed all the responsibility of the Mogul operation. But it was minimalist and it was ineffective, and the problem continued until 2007 or 2006, I think, when eventually, after continuous lobbying for nearly a quarter of a century, the Minister Noel Dempsey, agreed, as Minister for Natural Resources, he agreed to fund a major rehabilitation programme, which would cost over €10 million. And that was obviously great news for the locals. But it took a quarter of a century, really. So they put in place then a 4-year programme that would rehabilitate 6 chosen sites, the principal one being the 150-acre site at Gortmore, And that now, as we speak here, at the end of 2009, is approaching completion, and will rank as one of the great success rehabilitation projects ever carried out in Ireland. Indeed, it should be said that this is the only mining site, Silvermines, to receive funding from the government for a rehabilitation programme, because the environmental record of mining in Ireland was pretty dismal and very damning. And it's only until, even though we've had the Planning Act since 1963, the Silvermines mine opened in 1968 without any planning permission, without permission being sought or granted. So we have a bad record in those terms, and we are paying the price now with spending over €10 million on 6 different sites around the village. But when complete, it will give a new beginning really to the Silvermines area, because the tailings pond will be vegetated, and the other sites as well will be cleaned up. And this is good news. So it enables then the community to direct their attention towards things like heritage and tourism and so forth. In other words, it's a new beginning for an old location.